Bokeh confirming visual on suspect. I have him. Do I have clearance to take the shot? Engaging.
Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark and I have been working as a VFX artist and supervisor for almost a decade. In this video, I wanted to showcase my workflow for working with anamorphic footage and to showcase this beautiful lens that SIRUI sent over to me, the Ironstar 60mm. Just quickly, I want to thank SIRUI for sending over this lens. I can really only recommend it as the visuals coming out of this is absolutely beautiful. I actually went out to shoot some sample footage just to see more of the characteristics of this lens before committing to making this video and showcasing the CG integration. If you are interested in buying a lens or anything else from SIRUI, then you can use my code MARKMIKO to get 5% off your purchase. This discount code works for all of their products. You can also follow the links in the description, which will automatically apply the discount code. Alright, so just a quick summary of this video. I'll go through filming the live action plate of Scott just in my garden, so nothing fancy. Then I'll show you how I filmed a lens grid to be able to correct the lens distortion. Then we're going to move on to keying and rotoscoping Scott. And then I'll show you how I created the 3D environment in Cinema 4D. And finally, compositing everything together and making sure the final look matches what the SIRUI lens would actually look like in real life. Shout out to Scott and Simon for helping me with this video. If you have a moment, you should follow them on YouTube. Links are going to be in the description for their channels. Just a quick announcement, I do have a Patreon, but I haven't uploaded in a while because I have been so busy with my latest short film. However, I'm going to upload videos every month now starting this week, so please subscribe if you are interested. It also really helps me maintain the uploads to this channel as well. Thank you very much. We started with the wide shot. The setup is quite simple. We just used natural lighting, so we filmed at around 7:30 p.m. in the UK, which is blue hour. And we chose to shoot at blue hour because the lighting is very diffused. Then I built a small tent area to act as negative fill, so it lowers the exposure as Scott is walking through the cave towards the exit. You can see the effect if I show the footage from the beginning as he goes under the tent. We really didn't do too much more for lighting for this shot because I knew that he's going to be quite silhouetted. Moving on to the over the shoulder shot, it's actually the exact same setup. I just moved the camera closer to Scott. For the wide shot, I used an aperture of t5.6 and for the over the shoulder shot, I used an aperture of t2.2. I did not like how the mid close-up looked, so we scheduled a reshoot, which proved to be quite difficult actually due to the classic British weather where it's sunny but also rains, and then we did not see the sun for a few days, so it just rained more. Anyway, we managed to get a date where it didn't rain or wasn't too windy, so I ended up making a much better tent than the one previously. On the left side, Simon was holding up a tube light next to Scott, and on the other side, I placed a spotlight a little bit further, so the tent is blocking some of the light, which makes it look like Scott is inside of the cave. You can really notice on his hands how there's a gradient now, so it gradually becomes darker, which seems quite organic and realistic in my opinion. Of course, I would love to hear your opinion of these shots, so please leave a comment below. So I have set up the lens grid chart on my TV using my laptop, which I've just connected to it. And I made sure that my camera is far away, that all the lines are aligned. And I also made sure that both the TV and the camera are completely level. And I use my phone for that using just a random app. Let's also capture the bokeh texture before moving on to post-production. For this, I will simply set up a black background, then place my phone in front of it with my torchlight on. Then I'll place the camera on a tripod in front of it. Focus as close to the camera as possible, which you can slowly see creating the bokeh texture. Let's move on to post-production. So firstly, let's export the scene individually as EXR files with the ACIS-CG color space. Let's also export a frame of the grid chart, and lastly, the bokeh texture as well. Something to note at this point is that the final aspect ratio is different to what the original aspect ratio of the footage is. So I exported the clips from the scene in the final aspect ratio, but I want to do the lens distortion correction on the original aspect ratio because then I can use this lens distortion profile for any future projects that are shot on this specific lens, no matter what the end aspect ratio for any future shots may be. So the first step in After Effects is to create the lens distortion profile that we can use for all of the shots. Then let's apply it to all the live action plates. You can see it's quite subtle, but we are shooting on a 60mm lens, which has less of a distortion anyway. Plus we are also cutting off the edges of the frame as the final aspect ratio has less width. Then I 3D camera tracked the wide shot. I ended up stabilizing the over the shoulder shot so there is no camera movement in the source clip, as I will be adding a subtle tracking forward movement in the 3D scene later on in Cinema 4D. For shot 3, I know I will only export the frame of the CG background to speed up the rendering process. So let's do the motion track this shot while we're here. For these particular shots, I will render the depth of field baked into the renders from Cinema 4D. So let's prepare the bokeh texture we captured earlier. So the shot that was imported of the bokeh texture is already de-squeezed like the footage. It looks great as it is, so I'll just change the resolution to 500 by 500 and slightly scale up the footage so it covers a bigger area. Let's export this as a PNG, and because I work in the ACES color space, let's also make sure to set the color space to be Rec 709. Just another quick announcement: if you're looking for stock footage assets for visual effects, then please check out visualeffectspro.com because we have a large library of stock footage assets ready for you to use. Back to the video. I did some extensive testing to get the bokeh right in Cinema 4D before applying it to the camera in the actual 3D scenes. This is a comparison between the real bokeh texture we captured on camera and an export from Cinema 4D. We're going to be using just the following 3D models and textures: a rocky texture from Fab, a set of rocks from CG Trader, and lastly a crash helicopter model from CG Trader as well. So firstly, I just very randomly scattered copies of a few different rocks. It really was just the process of finding placements where it looked good. Simultaneously, I also moved the camera around to find a good composition, but I just had to make sure that the height and rotation of the camera matches the original. Then I placed the helicopter on the rocks. I then added a ground that was just a bit more flat, so it's just a texture but with a lot of displacement. Then I added a plane to roughly see where I'll be adding Scott in the compositing process. This also helped me to match the focus pull in the 3D scene to the original shot. The lighting comes from just a HDRI, but I placed a large box with a dark material to act as a negative fill, and also so I don't have to create a deeper cave. I made sure to add the correct bokeh and camera exposure settings to my camera in the scene. Then this shot was ready to export. The CG environment was the exact same for the over the shoulder shot. I only changed the position of the camera and animated a slow tracking movement. Then I changed the aperture of the camera to t2.2. For the mid close-up shot of Scott, I again very randomly moved some of the rocks around and played around with different visually interesting lighting. So in some areas the light kind of peeks in, and it was mainly just creating something realistic but also cinematic. I placed the reference footage at a similar distance to where he was in real life. I then changed the aperture to t1.9. Then the compositing process is fairly straightforward as well. Firstly, in the bottom of the main comp, we have the export from Cinema 4D. If I go into that comp and then the next comp as well, I added a subtle color and exposure correction to the rocks that are within the cave. Then I added the lens distortion so it matches the live action plate. The layer above this is the live action plate. I used a mix of keying and rotoscoping, then added a subtle real light around the edges. Added a pretty heavy color correction to match the CG environment. Also added a match noise effect and used a CG render as a source. Then added a light wrap. I changed the blending mode to lighten, which basically makes sure that only the bright highlights are bleeding into the edges of the matte. Above this layer is a mask for the foreground ground so the feet don't overlap, then some motion blur, and lastly the grade using film convert, and that's the hardest shot done. For the over the shoulder shot, it is a simpler comp. I keyed Scott, then changed his position to make it look like more of an over the shoulder shot. Because I significantly changed where he is in the framing, I firstly had to correct the camera distortion on the live action plate. Then we just have the background, which is the CG render from Cinema 4D. Then a light wrap, again with the light and blending mode. Then this is a pre-comp, and if I go back to the main comp, you can see I added the lens distortion so it applies to everything. Lastly, to make the movement not so digital, I added a very subtle camera shake, and of course the same grade at the top. Moving on to the mid close-up, I keyed and rotoscoped the footage. One main key that covers him entirely, then one more layer that specifically keyed his hair. I rotoscoped whatever wasn't within the green screen, and then lastly I removed the green spill. If you're interested in learning more about green screen keying, I uploaded a video a few weeks ago that you could check out, which is all about keying green screens. Anyway, the live action plate was once again moved quite significantly, so I removed the lens distortion. Now this is one of my all-time favorite built-in effects to After Effects. This is called Refine Soft Matte. These are the settings I use, but let me show this in action. This is the final shot without this effect. and this is what it looks like with it. Basically, when you key a shot, there is usually a small space left between your footage and the edge that is brighter because the green screen suddenly shows up. You could just shrink your green screen matte, but that would get rid of a lot of detail. Instead, you can use a plugin to recolor the edges to be the same as the edge of whatever you're keying. You usually have to play around the settings to get the end result you need, as each shot is so different when it comes to using this effect. But then once again, I applied the lens distortion to everything and lost it the same grade. And here is the full sequence without any text over it.
Okay, confirming visual on suspect. I have him. Do I have clearance to take the shot? Engaging.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Please consider subscribing if you like this type of content. I want to thank SIRUI again for sending me this lens. See you on the next video. Bye.
Success. Success! I thought that was good apart from the success.
Yeah.
Yeah.